Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Matt G. My guest today is also Matt G. So he's a good friend of mine. He's been in the Enlifted, or is in the Enlifted coaching community. That is the foundation of my coaching experience as well. And from the Summit Academy. And we're here to talk today about adventure. We're here to talk about leadership and many other topics I'm sure we will sidebar into. So Matt G, welcome back to the show. How are you, brother?
It's the best day ever, Matt G. When I get to talk to myself. It's
literally. Right? Well, pretty close, quasi literally, we'll say.
Yes.
Yeah. So good to have you back on.
In a lot of ways, man, we have a lot in common. It seems, every time we get to talk, we find something new. We learn something new about each other.
Absolutely.
And, we share more than a name, and I like it. I like that.
Me too, man.
Thanks for having me again, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I've there's a few folks that I've come into touch with that I'm like I want them as repeat guests, and you're definitely at the top of the list. So there's actually a few things that from our first conversation that we had that I still bring up in either coaching calls, or I made reference to you in my first group call. It was something you said. Actually, it was actually a decent place to start, actually. So I remember you had a really interesting take on identity, and you were the first person that sort of that you presented it to me as like, okay, I have an identity as like a dad. I have an identity as like a husband. I have an identity like as a coach or a leader, and all this. And I was all like, I found it curious because I'm like, well, how can you be like authentically you if you have these like changes of identity? Like, so I think I was getting a little hung up on the the semantics of the words or the definitions or whatnot. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. So that actually got brought up in my first group call for the Sober October group that we're doing.
Yeah.
Just the relationship of, okay, what is like authentically you? What does that mean? Versus like identity and then ego, and kind of how like the way you're presenting yourself can fluctuate in between those three words. So I want to pitch to you though, like I'm paraphrasing what you said, but yeah, can you explain that whole like idea of identity? And
Yeah. And I like how you brought up some words. I like some words you threw in there. Authenticity, one of them. And you asked a question, how can you express yourself authentically while, taking on different identities? It's weird, right? It feels weird at first, like anything is when you do something new for the first time, right? And to clarify what I mean when I talk about identity, there's a few things. One is it's in this transitional phase constantly. It's in flux. So identity is a being, not a, it's something you are currently being, right? It's who I am now, versus a definitive thing, right? Something that's solid and constricting or confining, right? So identity is in flux. It changes. And with that knowledge, right, you had mentioned a couple of examples, right? You can have an identity of parent, of coach, of athlete, however you want to describe yourself. And with that comes responsibility, right? Responsibilities of showing up as a person who is that, right? And then truthfully, you can ask yourself this question: Are you that all the time, right? And this, I see this oftentimes with athletes. We can use that example. So athletes are fierce competitors, right? They train hard, all of these things. There are also other things. They could also be students, right? They could also be leaders. They could be business owners. There's all kinds of possibilities, responsibilities as well. And so sometimes they conflict. Sometimes identities conflict with each other. So it becomes important to separate yourself and say, okay, do I need to be an athlete right now, or do I need to be a parent? Or do I need to be the artist, or do I need to be a listener? Do I need to be, right, anything?
Yeah.
Right. And so it does a few things. You can remind yourself to remain here, focused, present in the now. And you can get really good at stuff fast. Because here's the deal. You want to be a better athlete, do what the athletes do, right? Live like one, take on the identity. You want to be a better husband, father, spouse. Okay. What do they do? What are the behaviors associated with that? That's how you can start to take on identities for the better, right? So that's the whole my whole theory on what identity really means, and how we can apply that. By the way, is there's some scary shit that we do, right? We step into new roles all the time. Raise your hand if you started a new business, quit a job, right? Stopped doing something that you did, right? Got over a relationship, right? Quit drinking, quit smoking cigarettes, quit something. It's something, there's a next phase, right? And to get there, it's more of a matter of the identity than the habits. And the habits come with that, right? Well, who do I need to be or get to be, right? Who do I get to be as this person, right, that I'm stepping into? So I find it really valuable, especially in coaching people, in helping one, see the future, right? See what's possible by looking at other people that are doing it, and then assume that identity, right? Everything from how a person presents themselves, stands up, speaks, dresses, does in the morning, right? These are ways we can incorporate who we want to be in the future, who we want to be, become. So yeah, identity it's a great place to start for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's super cool. The one thing that really resonated with
Yeah.
me is like identity is in flux, and I I
Mm-hmm.
um I saw a presentation I want to say within the last week that had a different definition of, differed from the dictionary definition of identity, and it was repeated beingness. I was like, that's pretty cool. I mean, you're talking about, yeah, and that just seems a little more like, I love
Yeah.
that sort of intangible, it's you aren't your profession per se. It's like, okay, it's the intangible
Yeah.
qualities that make up what, how you are as a coach versus I'm a coach, right?
Right.
As your identity. So yeah, that's cool, man. I
Yeah,
one thing,
and that's the thing. You can separate yourself from an identity too. You don't
right,
have to take on an entire identity simply because it's something you do, right?
right,
I coach people. Does that make me a coach? It can,
yeah,
and I'm other things, and
yeah,
I'm a father,
yeah.
right? And I'm a speaker, and I'm a frisbee world champion. Why not?
Yeah,
Spelling it out,
yeah,
saying, well, I
yeah,
was just tossing a frisbee around, right? And I play
yeah,
the guitar, right? I do all these different things,
right.
um, and I can be whoever I want to be. Right?
Yeah,
That's authentic to me. You to bring up authenticity.
yeah.
That's what to me authenticity is why label? This is what I'm doing now, right?
Let's get into it. That was actually exactly where I was going, is I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get into authenticity, because I'm bringing this
Yeah,
up in all my interviews and the people I'm talking with, because it's, the word, like, my authenticity, my authentic truth, or I want to speak my truth. This gets thrown out quite a bit these days,
yeah,
right? And I hear people say it, so I'm actually literally asking everybody, okay, well, what does that mean? What does authenticity mean to you? And so I'm
yeah.
curious, like you touched on it a bit, like let's jam on it a bit though, because it's important, right? It's
It's a good question.
yeah,
Yeah,
let's go down this route.
yeah. I had a coaching call last week with a client of mine. He's a small business owner. He owns a small chiropractic clinic, and he does some weight loss coaching, transformation coaching. Great stuff. Anyway, we go through some work, right? He has some inner blocks that we're working through, from a behavior standpoint, from a professional standpoint as well. And this phrase came up as we're, doing our work, our coaching. And he said, I'm afraid to speak my truth. Great. My response, great. What the fuck does that mean, bro?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's lacking in clarity. And that's the struggle. It's lacking in clarity. So are you afraid of it, or have you not practiced it enough?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And the whole reason is, right, there's a more to the sentence, the statement. It was, I'm afraid to speak my truth because of what other people might think. Okay.
Right.
So there's we're worrying about external factors. Set that aside for now. For now, it's, have you practiced speaking your truth? Well, no. Why? Or why not? And what ends up happening is he had no definition for what is my truth? So my question, what the fuck does that mean, was really a serious question. Can you so clearly define your truth? It's a great thing to say, right? And what we can translate my truth to is myself, right? Who I am. So go back to identity. Can I express who I am?
Ooh, I like
right?
that translation. It's really
That's how we demonstrate authenticity. And in order to do that, well, do some work, find yourself, find out, fuck around enough, find out enough. That's been a motto for the last few days. It's hilarious.
I like it.
And oftentimes it's, okay, well, how do you want to be seen? And what are you doing right now? And what's the difference?
Right.
Yeah. Oftentimes there's, take this, for example, social media, right? People use social media. Most of the time people portray what you think, what you think others want to see.
Right. 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So you wake up every morning and you're like a clown in the mirror, putting your paint on your face, you're wearing your mask so you can go and show up, and you feel that it's not me, right? This isn't who I am. How can I show up authentically? How can I market myself authentically, right? And it's because you're putting on a mask. Take the mask off, see what happens, right? Where I like to start is vulnerability. That's, taking the mask off exposes some stuff. So what can you do? How can you express yourself in a way that is vulnerable, that is exposing parts of you, parts of your behaviors, the actions you've taken, the fuck ups, the mistakes, the bad choices, all of that? How can you expose that to people? And by default, expose it to yourself too. Right. And do that. Take a look, see how authentic that is. What ends up happening, and I challenge my clients on this, in my coaching program, and just because it's fun, we do this writing exercise where they describe their evil inner business partner. You may be familiar with that exercise, right?
Yeah.
And we go through a process of getting that down on paper, describing all the ways that this imaginary person in your head, right, ruins your life, sabotages you. Okay, cool. And you name it, give the guy a name. And let's call it Matt, right? Why not? Yeah. Great, we're blaming someone now, right? And what happens when we change all that to me? I do this to me, right? Reflect it back. So I have my clients do this, read through it, and they're like, okay, yeah, I do this all to myself. And then the hard part, this is your moment. This is how you're taking your mask off. Go post that shit on social media. Or go sit there in front of your spouse and read it out loud. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I sabotage myself by thinking I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I hold myself back by failing to ask questions and meet people where they're at, by waiting too long to take action. Right. All these things come up.
Mm-hmm.
That's authentic, and it sucks. It's hard. It's hard, man. It's hard to do. We want to get through to the other side of that, though, right? It's a tunnel. We got to go in, get out the other side, and you'll see what authenticity really means to you when you go through this process.
Yeah, I love that, man. Like, so yeah, definitely vulnerability. To attempt to summarize, you had a lot of great points there. The tunnel comment immediately makes me think of the hero's journey, which is a big part of some of the training that you and I have done, and it comes up in my course. So anybody that's familiar with that will be familiar with it. Anybody that's just listening to the podcast, guaranteed you've come in touch with the hero's journey, whether it's in pop culture, it's in so many movies.
You'll recognize it when you
Yeah,
see it too.
for
Yeah.
sure. So that is like, yeah, dude, I love that because so a few things that I've heard that I've really enjoyed or like has resonated with me about authenticity is one of my mentors had mentioned, not so much he's like, it can't necessarily put a finger on what it is, but I know what creates it, and that's safety. So like when I'm in a safe spot, I no longer feel the need for a persona or an ego, so I can drop that and then speak from the heart. So it's in a men's group. He mentioned that. He's like, I feel safe amongst you people. I don't feel like I have to get in a pissing contest or have my ego or filter it through something. So
Yeah.
I took it one step further and I was like, I like the visual. I like visuals too. And I said, if I'm speaking to you just straight from my heart and I'm just, we're having a great conversation. So I feel safe. My ego's dropped and now it can just come straight out of my heart in a straight line towards you. There's no persona. There's no ego that's going to get fractured or, ambiguified and that sort of thing. Right. So I like that phrase of it. I also love the way that you said there's some work involved to get to the stage that you can be authentic, that being vulnerability is sort of a precursor, if you will, or perhaps just a, flip sides of the coin almost, right, for them to work that way. So I really like what you were saying with that.
Well, there's the point you brought up is safety. And I can question that. Well, what comes first? Safety, which is relying on external environments, or vulnerability, which is something you can create. And yes, you can enter into an environment that is safe, or you can begin to create safe environments for yourself.
Right.
Which hey, acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the holes. Where are you not feeling safe? Open up to that, and now you can create safety.
I love that.
Now it's around you, right?
That's like taking it one step further. I love that. That's really cool. So vulnerability, vulnerability creates
safety. Ooh.
Safety. Like vulnerability creates authenticity, or are they one and the same? It's almost like, are they like synonyms?
Well, authenticity is a feel. It's a feel thing.
You're right.
Right. Ask anyone when they talk about authenticity. How do you know? I just feel it. Right.
Yeah.
It's a feel thing. It's a comfort thing. It's doing things from a place of, we can call it flow. Right. That's authentic. Doing things that that feels inauthentic. But when you're in a state of play, generally that feels authentic.
Yeah.
You try go and play toss a frisbee around and see if you feel imposter syndrome. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's cool, man. That's cool. And you brought up the whole evil, easy for me to say, evil business partner. You
Yeah.
know, we touch on a little bit on this too, because that was the third part of this triangle relationship, like identity, authenticity, and then ego. So
Yeah.
where ego shows up, where does ego show up in your life? What kind of relationship do you have with your ego now? You know, is there some resentments, or is there like a do you coexist very well? Is there an understanding? And was it always like that?
Good. Yeah. Good question. I wrote about this quite a bit, and I'll send you a blog post I did. You can share it with your audience. It's a good one. We talk about the ego. Um, yeah. So, in my opinion, ego is the it's the filter, right? Its purpose is to provide safety. So we have this filter, and anything that comes in to our space, mental, emotional, physical space, it first conflicts with our ego before it gets to us.
Mm,
So now you're separating. So you have the ego as a version of yourself. And this is all my theoretical brain, and I'll make it make sense as best as I can. Right. So there's a block, there's a thing, where does the ego get its information from? How does it make decisions? Right. How does the ego decide what gets through? Uh, it's 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 from experience.
mm.
And that's not always a reliable thing, right?
Right, right.
So it goes to what we are not most comfortable with, and easiest way through, right?
Mm,
Not necessarily the most favorable outcome, right? Or the thing that we want. It depends on patterns. It depends on habitual behavior, right?
mm.
It's similar to the victim mentality. But what is it protecting you from? Like, that's the question. Uh, it's whatever feels off, whatever feels uncomfortable. So if you're the type of person who gets uncomfortable in awkward situations, your ego is going to step in and say, "Hey, I got you. Don't worry, you can hide in the corner." That's your ego talking, right?
Mhm,
Or, "Hey, don't worry, you can just make jokes the whole night. You don't have to be sound smart. You can be the funny guy," right?
mhm,
That's your ego. That's your ego talking, protecting you from an uncomfortable situation, or a dangerous one, right? Or a
mhm.
situation where you might get mauled by bears or something. So it's helpful, right? It's a filter. Yeah. So in my life, it's shown up for sure, a lot of different ways. Especially when I was younger, and I had this came up yesterday. I was talking to our friend Nate. He's a wizard. He got in my head with some stuff. We worked through some things. Um, yeah, we talked about this. I spent a lot of time feeling like I'm not good enough. And so what my ego would do is overcompensate to make up for my not being good enough, right? And I knew this even when I was young. It was a conscious thing when I was young. I would remember being in situations and try to show off, right? One up everybody. I had to, I had to be the best, right? Or if I was like below average, not good enough, right? Um, I imagine I learned that somewhere. And over time, that became a repeated thing. So now, as I go into any situation, my default is to be the last person to speak, one up people, uh, or try to do something a little more, a little better, which can be useful, sure, and it can get annoying. It's a commitment, bro. And I've done this with my coaching, right? Over delivering value, which is a great thing if I'm getting paid for it, right? But if I'm charging a little bit, when I started doing personal training, I was charging $25 a session for an hour, because that's all I thought people would pay. And then I would just put in so much work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I was like, I can't afford this. And I'm getting good at it. So, okay, I got to charge more, but am I worth it? So you start adding things, right? So I start adding, my ego comes in as like, oh, if you want to be worth $150 an hour, you got to have all the bells and whistles, right? You got to be providing them everything. You want to sell a $10,000 coaching program, you better have the technology and all this other stuff in place. That's overcompensation for me, right? And you can see how that happens. On the flip side of that, there have also been moments personally in my life where I've done the opposite. And this is also an ego thing, a relationship thing. I didn't want to be the guy that was showing off. So my ego stepped in and said, oh, you can drive a shitty car, right? Because you don't want to show off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've historically had a used vehicle that I let go. I don't take care of it as well as I should, right? That's ego too. Not wanting to be something, and it's all made up. It's all in an effort to keep you safe. It's all in an effort to keep you also predictable. The ego likes predictability. Any deviation from that, and it's like the ego doesn't know what to do. Good news is you can dissolve the ego with various tools, we can say.
Sure.
And the other question you asked, I believe, was my relationship with it now.
Yeah.
Here's what I imagine is really what to do with your ego. Right now we understand, right? We understand what the ego, it's a thing, right? It's a tangible thing. It's a filter. It's not you anymore. So you can have a conversation. Learn to question the ego, and also be aware and be conscious of when it's showing up, when it's present. One of the things that I teach in my coaching, in the leadership program, in the impact program, so it's leadership coaching. We teach these 10 skills, 10 essential leadership skills, and one of them is decision making. And in order to make good decisions, we can measure this, right? We want to make decisions fast, and we want them to be accurate. So the faster you can come to a conclusion, make a decision, and the more accurate that decision is, that's a good decision, I would say. If you take your time, or if it was the wrong one, if it's a mistake, it costs you. So when we can make fast and accurate decisions, that's best. And there's two types. There's passive decisions, and then there's assertive decisions. The passive ones are unconscious victim mentality decisions, or simply habitual decisions, right? At this point, you can answer this. What you have for breakfast in the morning is a habit, more than a conscious thing. Yeah. How you make your coffee is a habit. These are decisions we make. And then there's decisions on, oh, someone's calling me. Do I answer it or hang up or ignore it? Or if someone calls to you and you instantly go to a thought of like, oh, why is this person calling me? I just thought of that because I'm getting a notification on my phone, which, yeah. So there's decisions that we make all the time. So I challenge people to list them out. Can you even list out the decisions you made consciously today? Meaning assertively, meaning on purpose. And oftentimes it's a no. It's a oh wait. Even when you go to a restaurant, right? You choose what you want off the menu. Was that a conscious decision, or were you basing it on what's worked in the past?
Sure. Yeah. That's a good
Like,
point.
oh, I usually like burgers, so
Yeah.
I'm going to get a burger today at this new place.
Yeah.
Ego.
Yeah.
Now, with that information, just fuck, is this serving me or not?
Mm.
If not, we'll do something different. Flip a coin. If yes, go with it. The ego is there to keep you safe, and you can take the back door and just manipulate how it looks at the information and makes those decisions. It's there either way. And this is a thing, man. And I'm sure you can speak on this too. The ego is going to be there, no matter how many ayahuasca ceremonies you go and do, right? No matter how much energy work and coaching and money you pay a mentor, great. The ego is still present, and it's a relationship thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Well put. Yeah. That's, I spent, a decent chunk of the last like 3 or 4 years, like really doing some ego work and trying to, yeah, just reach this point where I was dissolved or just like, and even some of these other emotions, I wanted to get them up and out as opposed
Yeah.
to just allowing them. And it's just like recently I'm realizing it's, yeah, it's redefining a relationship, which I mean, ties so well in with this theme of addiction recovery, right? So much of what
Yeah.
you have to do is like redefining, things that we used to see through the lens of like a substance, like for example for drinking. For me, the majority of my live music performances, whether I was in the audience or on stage, was I was inebriated, very
Mm.
very much so, right? So like redefining camping or being out in nature. So yeah, it's yeah, all great stuff. I love your takes on all of these. And we've kind of planted the seed. We've mentioned victim mentality, and I do want to bring it up because
Yeah.
it's for me, and I'll speak to my own personal experience with it. Like coming out of, my first, stint of like alcohol free, there was definitely like me being victim of circumstances and all my parents and this and that. And it wasn't like super prominent, but it definitely was there, a little bit of feeling sorry for myself to the fact that I will quote, never be able to drink again. All
Mm.
these like finalized binary statements that I would use. And in once, I guess on one hand, it is worth mentioning. It was something to reject and get that sort of like the first stages of motivation. I call it like kind of the Tony Robbins, like the I'll show you, or like the snap myself out of it, right? So using the
Yeah.
victim mentality to rebel against it, because I do have a natural like
Mm.
rebellious side to myself. So rebelling against the victim mentality, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. The main thing
Yeah.
this topic that I want to, plunge into here, Matt, would be the difference because you're talking about leadership, and I see a leadership as sort of that polar opposite to the victim mentality. So if you want to become
Yeah.
your own hero, your own leader, and then be able to lead others, first you have to climb out of that victim mentality.
Yeah. So you're asking about the difference
The difference,
or the
and just even
comparison.
like, yeah, did you have a stage in your life with the victim mentality where the victim mentality came up and you used it to springboard yourself into a leader, like your own hero, if you will, in your own story, your own leadership? Was there a pendulum swing from a victim mentality into leadership? Yeah, just a little bit of background on that as far as your own life
Mm.
experience.
Mm. Pendulum swing. Yeah. Let's define victim mentality.
Mm,
Uh, Simplified definition: it's a perception that you're a victim
yeah.
and victim of what? Of literally everything. So where does it show up? It shows up, in conversations with a spouse, with your boss. It shows up when uh, you walk outside and you say, "It's raining again. Damn it."
Yeah.
Right? That's the victim mentality. It shows up. It shows up when it wants to,
Yeah.
right? Because it's anything externally that's coming in, right? We talked about this before,
Yeah.
what's happening around. And it's taking that and placing blame on anything but your behavior, your actions, right? And so it's going back to the ego, the decision making. You're making decisions really passively, on a very unconscious, not even subconscious. It's an unconscious level. And the moment that those decisions become conscious is when the victim mentality is no longer relevant. Simply by questioning it, right? That's all it takes. And that's step one, right? So the pendulum swing is, it comes when you realize the decisions you're making are out of blame and out of victimhood, playing that victim card. And I've talked a lot about this. Of course, I've experienced the victim mentality in my lifetime. Here's a fun story. When I was in college, right, I studied music in college, and I loved it, man. I love music. I love playing. And I started to get to a point in my college career where I realized, oh, this is work. I don't want this to feel like work anymore. And I had this one professor. It was I believe my fourth year as a music student, and it was I forget the class. It was a pretty in-depth class on music theory, and
sure.
Scoring analysis. And yeah, there was a lot of writing and reading and listening to music. It was a lot. You had to be a pro. And I would blame my teacher because I was getting terrible grades, right? I would get failing grades on papers that I submitted, and I would do poorly on tests. But I loved music, man. It was my thing. And I kept saying that I love it and I don't want to treat it like work. And so when I left school, and this story stayed with me for years, I left school, by the way. I didn't graduate college. I had all of the credits except this one class completed. And after leaving, I would tell people this story. I was like, I had this one professor, and she was so bad. She sucked. She made my passion for music go away. And because of that, I quit. I didn't want to pursue it anymore. Right. And I had dreams, man. I wanted to write music for film. I wanted to go on to grad school. I wanted to continue to play live shows. And I blamed my professor, and then told people that story, this bullshit story that I made up because I was too stuck at the time to realize it was my own damn fault. Right. So years later, I realized, and, doing some internal work myself, I get to the point where I realize, you know what, back then it was me. My priorities were elsewhere, and I love music. And I was just telling people that it was, she took away my love for music. Right. I told people that. And in reality, it was me not handing in papers on time, hence failing grades. Or, I'd stay up super late the night before to type out a 7-page paper that I had due. Right. And the quality is going to be pretty low at that point. So, but it was her fault. No way that's my fault. Right. I did everything I could. Right. Tests. Oh yeah. Well, when you don't do homework very well, you're not going to do well on tests. Negation's acknowledged. When you show up to class only occasionally and you leave early, you're not going to do very well. So all my fault. I apologized to her last year. This is now 11 years removed from this moment, 10 years. And I found her on Facebook.
No way.
Yeah. And I said, hey, professor, your class was amazing. I loved it. And thank you. I thanked her. And that's all. I thought that was simple. Yeah, man. It took me 10 years to take ownership over that. In my leadership training, we have three steps. All right, we teach a lot of stuff. There's a lot of information, but 3 steps. No, step 1 we talked about already. It's identity, right? And that's where you uncover this stuff, your victimhood, where you experience the victim mentality. Step 2 is ownership, and it's where you start to audit all of these stories that you have of your identity. And we do some work. We go in, identity can go back in time. We can ask, like, who were you in 1999, right? Or who were you in your freshman year of college? What was that like? What did you do? How'd you fuck up? Right?
Yeah.
Who hurt you when you were in your sophomore year of college? Right? There's some victim mentality stories in there that come up, and you work through those. Step 2 is to own it, though. It's to take ownership. The moment you take ownership is where you become a leader. That's, in my definition of leadership, it requires ownership, for sure. If you want people to follow you, if you want respect, and you want to be seen as someone who's leading by example, then take ownership. Embody the thing, right? Embody it, and see where you could have done better. That's the only way to get better, too, is be critical of yourself. And if you're constantly in this blaming state, you're also not being critical on yourself. And so you'll stay the same. Who wants to do that, right? Who wants to be stuck?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. Some people do argue for they're stuck, and there's a degree of that. For me,
there's the ego again.
The ego, for sure, but
yeah.
Guaranteed, like, there was a part of me that desired, needed, wanted, whatever the word would be, to stay in that.
Yeah.
Because out of that, I became angry and frustrated, and I reached up this boiling point of frustration to do the whole, the motivational, I'm going to show you. And again, I was saying, I'm going to show you, pointing the external finger, when in fact it was like, okay, I'm going to show me. I can show me now, right? And yeah, absolutely, dude. That's like, I love this. This conversation is great. And that's the whole, I love your story, man. The whole, the whole journey, this whole hero's journey, becoming your own hero, becoming the leader, your own leader, stepping out of this victim mentality, right? And yeah, owning your shit. And, the projection part of the lifted training that we've done, it can be, initially, it's like, Mark always says, it gets, you get somebody on the nose with it. But honestly, it was the biggest relief for me, is when you're realizing that you're projecting, and just whoop, point that finger back at yourself. It actually makes me feel lighter. And it's like, I think it's just a matter of, if you're ready to hear it, it has the opposite effect of what you'd think. But if it gets pointed back and you get super defensive, it's just going to weigh you down. It's going to further constrict around you, right? So it's that claiming responsibility. That's great. Yeah. What's the third thing? That's like,
action.
Oh, action.
Yeah, it's okay. What are you gonna do now?
Yeah. Now that you
yes. And also, a lot of times with that is clarity, is knowing what you want, what you don't want, who you want around, things like that, how you want to feel. This is really important. And if we can define leadership, the definition I use is motivating or leading or guiding people to accomplish a common goal, right? And we've talked about this before, I'm sure, in the last podcast we did, is how leadership is an art, and art is just a constant iteration on itself, right? It's a living thing. Some school teachers will tell you otherwise. No one is bad at art, right? You're either practicing art or you're not practicing art, right? You're either doing art, it's a practice, or you're not doing anything, right? So if you're leading is an art. You're going to get better at it. It's going to be different than the last time, and it's an everyday thing. So show up practice your art. And the whole purpose is we want to accomplish a goal, and we want other people generally to help, and they also want to accomplish that goal. Like, hey, where do you want to go eat tonight? Right? We talk, you get a group of people together. Well, what's the goal? Everyone's hungry, so we got to go eat. All right. Well, who's going to take charge? Who's going to make a decision? Right? That's an art. What if I want sushi and everyone else wants pizza? I got to use my skills to convince everyone that we're getting sushi. Why? Because we're all hungry.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I was talking about leadership. We were talking about it before. And the leader shows up. The leader shows up authentically as themselves. And that's it.
Yeah.
And they're simply being. Yeah. They're like, I want this. This is the thing. Yeah. How are we going to do it? Are we going to take steps? What are the steps we're going to take? Right. Or you could sit around and waste time and think about it and talk about it. So the third step is action. So let's do stuff. Let's get things done.
Again, fast and accurate, like you say, fast and accurate. The one thing that jumped out at me when you said that, the action part, it's so good. It's because another big pitfall of self-development, in my opinion anyways, and I've been guilty of it, is finding a spot where you have a recognition about yourself, or you've done some reflection. You're like, oh, okay, that's why I'm like that, and then that's where it ends. So that's where it's like action is like integration. Okay, now that I have this, I've reflected on myself, and now that I know this about myself, I don't now need to go back in and listen to 5 more podcasts about it, take a bunch more notes. Okay, so otherwise it just becomes more of this procrastination, and learning is procrastination if you aren't integrating it, right? If there's no action, it's a different kind of stuck. It's better, you're not the victim mentality, you're the next step up, but you're still not, you're spinning your tires, or I'm spinning my tires, right? So
you could keep gaining more knowledge, right? And I just had right before this, I had a coaching call in my group program. We talked about confidence, because I ask everyone today, where they feel the least confident, and all different things. Okay, confidence is a thing. It comes from one place. Well, it comes from 3 places. Knowledge is the first step, right? You can get confident by learning more, right? The second step is reps, though. Right? The second step is experience. So, and people compare themselves all the time to each other, to themselves. They compare their abilities in one area to other areas. And I challenged someone today because his confidence level was low in his ability to communicate value, right? Sell, let's say.
Yeah.
Hey, how long have you been practicing that? About a year, compared to the thing he's really confident in, which is coaching. He's a fitness coach, right? So you've been doing this for 10 years, this for 1 year. How are they the same? Right. So, he's gotten better. Right? Great. You've gotten better at this. You've learned some stuff. How many reps have you done? The real question is, how often do you pitch your offer?
Right.
How often? And here's the reference comparison we can make. Athletes step onto the field to play a game, or they line up to the starting line of their race, usually once. And prior to that, there's weeks and weeks of preparation, depending on your sport, right? But you show up to the field, and that's 1% or 10%, we can say, right, of the product of the practice. The other 90% is the reps, right? Is going to the gym. It's not confident in, and this is a thing that I do in my coaching. It's like step 1 of identity is identifying the things that you are confident in, that you're not confident in. and finding the things you're afraid of doing, finding the things you enjoy doing, figuring out both. But we can do these things that you're uncomfortable, lacking confidence in, rep them out more, and boom, you're going to be more confident.
Yeah.
It's going to show. It's that simple. Confidence is literally in your speech.
Mm,
The more you speak it, the better you can articulate things, the better it sounds.
right.
My 100th podcast was way better than my first one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Every question
um,
stumping you. Oh, let me think about that for a minute. Yeah,
yeah.
I get you.
Yeah. And then the third thing, man, confidence comes from three places: knowledge, reps, results. You get results
Yeah.
or feedback, right? You get results or you get feedback and someone says, dude, that was awesome.
Mm,
That's going to give you some confidence.
yeah.
And I look for that shit, man. I look for validation. I look for that feedback. It's been one of the most powerful things I've done in my personal development, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. I love all this whole conversation's been great. It's so funny. I had so much the idea I had for this was talking about the importance of adventure, and it's like, and it'll be titled that, right?
We're
But
there
it's like,
too.
but yeah, we're getting to like we're it's like a classical piece of music. We're coming to it's like the crescendo at the end, right? That we're getting into it. But there had to be like the movements beforehand, the table setting, if you will. So
Yeah, we've
speaking
had
of
three movements. There's still a
yes.
reprise, and then it's sonata form. Yeah,
Yeah,
you got
there we go. Yeah, love it, love it. And when you're talking about like leadership being art, I just love the comparison and like the parallels of art. Art is life, life is art. To me, that's like drawing from elements of like if I'm open and I'm listening to what's around me and I am present, the
yeah.
elements of different synchronicities are coming to me, and that's like a little tap on the shoulder that I'm on the right path, or oh,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to collaborate with this person because like this was a reminder today that kind of came out of nowhere, or somebody called me and texted me about something I've been thinking about, right? And like even you and I, we've been dropping, different elements of the topics earlier in the conversation, and they just come together in this beautiful way 10 minutes
Yeah.
later in the conversation. So to
Hmm.
me, a conversation can be like an art piece and like
It's an art form.
art
Yeah.
form, right? And I think that's what we're doing here today too.
It's a
So
dance. It's a connection.
yeah,
Um, Funny enough, when that happens, people like it.
yes, yeah.
If you're listening to a podcast that flows like that, people can tell. If you are engaging with someone and there's flow like that, if you feel it, and 90% of that is intangible. It's like
Mm,
something you can
yeah,
feel
yeah.
and something you can recognize. 10% of that is the words.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
Only 10%, by the
yeah,
way. That's not a
yeah,
lot, dude.
yeah. That's
And
right.
here's a way that we can reprise here, right?
Yeah,
And life is an adventure for sure.
yeah,
And I can ask you this: what's the biggest adventure you've ever been on?
yeah. It's yeah. I'd have to think about that for a sec, Matt. The first thing that comes to mind. So yeah, okay. So I'm gonna speak to it, and there's gonna be some callbacks to what we were talking about earlier, because
Yes.
my ego wants to say, or like the way I'm identifying as like a coach or a leader, even my perception of me being a leader is that it's the addiction recovery, right? So
Okay.
so that started me on this journey to figuring out who I actually am and what I actually am, right? So that was
Yeah.
only step one. So step two, but that started it. So step two now is me doing all the reasons that I had that addictive behavior in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's the second part of that, and I believe that is my favorite part, or my the best adventure that I've been on.
Yeah.
And I view it as an adventure because I am daily confronting different fears.
Mm-hmm.
I've made an enormous amount of progress on limiting beliefs about myself, tracing them back, allowing them to come up, get curious about them versus whoop, pushing them back
Yeah.
down. They're doing different things to distract them out of me, or out of my line of sight, anyways, line of feel. So that would be it. It'd be like
Yeah.
the reason that I had addictive behaviors in the first place, and I believe that the third component of that, after I, I guess, morph out of this current iteration of me, is just getting to the point of like why I'm here, like why I'm
Mm.
truly here, who I truly am, without
That's
learning.
your adventure. Yeah.
That is the adventure right there. So
Yeah, man.
that's it. How about
Have
for
you
you?
ever have you ever gone camping before?
Heck yeah, I love
Yeah.
camping.
You ever go camping and in the rain? Has it ever rained on you?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Snowed, in fact.
Snowed.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
woke up in some snow for sure.
You woke up in some snow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
I initially, it's very novel. It was very novel, so it kind of was surprising. Yeah, I like we're doing this. So it was surprising.
Mhm.
There was an initial very fleeting victim-y kind of, oh, like why am I here? Why did it have to snow? And then it immediately shifted on me to like, wow, like I'm camping in the snow. This is going to be make a good story. And then actually the physicality of getting out was actually quite invigorating. It was very novel. It was very novel, and
Yeah.
I was awake within basically a split second, even though it was quite early in the morning, and it got me moving, and it really
Mm,
challenged a lot of,
motivation.
yeah, it challenged a lot of like my comfort, my literal comfort. I was like physically out of my comfort zone and mentally.
Did you learn from that?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I learned, yeah, more so about like what I can handle.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I learned that, what could be framed as like a disaster or a worst case, not or maybe not a worst case scenario, but like on that spectrum, like on a
Mm,
not so good case scenario, can actually be quite fun.
yeah.
And there can, if you add some humor and the right attitude to it towards it,
Mm,
yeah, you can shift it very, very quickly.
yeah. So there's a couple of things there, right, that we can point out and notice. Um, Going into that, I imagine you had a goal. I'm going to have this awesome camping trip, right? Get
Yeah.
to spend some time in nature, hike around, right? All these great things. Um, Something unexpected happens, right?
Yeah.
You're faced with it. Something gets in your way, right? Which, by the way, uh, something comes up, your ego steps in and helps you make a decision, right? Um, because it's a novel experience, because it's new, you fuck around and you find out, and then life gets better.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
to simplify this, man, what if we treat life as that? What if
Mm,
we treat our day-to-day bullshit as an adventurous opportunity, as
mm.
an opportunity to challenge ourselves, fight literally, stay alive, have have fun in the process, see if we could do it, right? I wonder what's going to happen,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Make decisions, right? This is adventure. This is adventure showing up. And again, most people are doing this. They're not doing this because they're unconscious of it. They're unconscious of their decisions, how they interact with things in their life, and it's way more fun, in my opinion, to treat mundane stuff, uh, dramatic shit too, victim mentality stuff. Treat that like an adventure. Have
Mm.
fun with it, and things are going to be different. And also, you mentioned a few things. Um, you thought to yourself, "Oh, this is going to make a great story,"
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Think about the story that your actions will tell.
Mm.
Is it one that's worth telling? Is it one worth sharing?
Yeah, sure.
Or here's where my brain goes: how are we going to make this epic?
Right.
Right. And on that note, do I want to live a life that is not epic? um,
Right.
no. So go back. We're describing the hero's journey, by the way. It's an adventure. Watch movies, watch Star Wars. That's the hero's journey,
Luke
right?
Skywalker. Yeah.
Your
Matrix.
hero, Luke, meets a guide, or he has a problem. He meets a guide. They do some stuff
Yeah.
and comes out on the other end, right?
Yeah.
But there's a problem first. That's the hero's journey. And what an epic adventure Luke had, right? What an awesome adventure. So yeah, to your theme of this conversation, I think we summated it pretty well, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, dude. I very much enjoyed that. Always enjoy talking with you, Matt.
Yeah.
Matt G. You know, great. Yeah, great topics, and I really appreciate the, you know, the bringing the art into it. As soon as we had that, I'm like, because I could feel it. I could sense that we were doing that throughout. Like there was some
Mm,
hints and seeds and things were growing. And it's almost like cooking a meal, right? You start something over on the stove over here, and then we're going over and
yeah.
fixing something. You go back to it and jump around, and now you prep the meal, and the meal's ready to go. And I hear at the end. So definitely some, yeah, I love the flow. Always enjoy talking with you. You
For
know,
sure.
if people are digging, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they will. You know, I
Mhm.
imagine they will. Are digging what you're saying, and they want to reach out to you. They like this the sound of your
Please.
program. Yeah, where
Yeah.
what's the easiest way to get a hold of you, and where can we find you online?
Yeah. So first, go on Instagram. Matt G32 is the handle, and it's um, I'll answer you on there. I've made a decision to post as little as possible from now on. So I'll talk to you there. I post stories all the time, and yeah, that's a good place. My website, mysummit.academy. That's it. And on there, information about what I do. There's two things that I do that people can take advantage of right now. And the first one is my group program, my group coaching program. This is specifically for entrepreneurs, coaches, creative types, and we work through different processes to get you from identity, like understanding your identity, taking ownership, taking action. Most of the time, it's so you can excel in your business, right? Most of the time, people have something they want to get better at. They want to improve. They want to add value. They want to get organized, structured. So we do all of that in the course. And it's been a really enlightening process taking people through that. I'll tell you that, man. Um, the types of people that I get to work with are so open to doing this type of work, and so eager to go deeper, which is
Yeah,
amazing. So if that's someone like, if you're listening and you are open-minded to doing the deep work and taking action, or for some reason like you struggle to take action, which we all do, right? Yeah, that's the course. And then I have my adventures, right? This is the fun part. I take people out in nature, specifically to do hard shit, right? We create this opportunity for a hero's journey. And so that could entail backpacking, climbing a mountain. Currently, I've got one coming up in December. We're going to be in Vermont if you're in the States, and we're going to spend a weekend. And this is more of a business development weekend. And we're going to go skiing. It's going to be cool.
amazing.
Next year, though, we've got some trips planned. One in South America. We have Mount Rainier in Washington that we're going to get on. One in Europe, and then
Wow.
I'm going to add one more in the States. That calendar is going to come out soon, though. And these are pretty epic adventures, right? It's a commitment. It's a week long or so of dialing in, and you'll get an opportunity to tap into some stuff, man. Because what happens when you disconnect for 2-3 days?
Yeah.
You get to go home. You
Right.
go home. You go home to who you are. You get to
Yeah.
your primal senses.
Yeah.
The victim mentality is gone, right?
Yeah.
You just listen to this conversation we just had, and
Yes.
imagine that in one dose,
Yep.
ready.
Yeah.
What usually happens, and I've seen this, and I've experienced this, is you do something like that, and then every decision you make in the next year or so is going to be reflective of that work. It's super powerful. So yeah, 2 opportunities. All of the information's on my website. I'll link that to you. I referenced a blog post earlier as well. I'll share that with
Yeah,
you.
please do. Yeah.
Your listeners can have the online program that I have. It's a self-guided mastery course, right? If they want to do all this stuff on their own, they
Rad.
can have that. That's a gift for me.
That's amazing. Thanks,
So I'll
man.
send you info for that too.
Yeah, that'd be rad.
That's it. I love talking to you, Matt. It's
Yeah, same.
always a good time. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Matt. And yeah, I just love what you do. I love your presentation. Really enjoyed
Thank you,
jamming
man.
with you. It really does feel like we made some music, and we will have to literally make some music one day. I've seen you playing guitar
Yeah.
here. We got to jam. We got to jam here at some point for sure. So, dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on, dude. And
Yeah.
enjoy the rest of your time at the lake house. And we'll talk sooner than
Thank
later,
you.
I'm sure.
Please, for sure. And thank you guys for listening. Appreciate it.